Samsung, after introducing the A series, the J series, the E series, and more, is back with yet another series, the C series. Now, what has Samsung crammed into this, the C5? And where does this stand among Samsung's various series of phones? Let's find out. Hey, this is Sundar from C4E Tech, and you're watching my full review of the Galaxy C5. Let's get started. Let's begin with the design and build. The first thing you'd notice is that its design is strikingly similar to that of the OnePlus 3. That's not necessarily a bad thing because the OnePlus 3 is definitely a well-built phone, and so is this. It feels really good in the hand. It's super slim at 6.7mm and weighs in at about 145 grams. With a 5.2-inch display, you may think this isn't a very compact phone, but Samsung has done well with regards to screen-to-body ratio just like they do with their other phones. It's approximately 71%, which makes the overall footprint a tad smaller. The fingerprint scanners found to the front, embedded in the home button. It's fast and accurate, no issues whatsoever. The button placements are the regular affair. Volume rockers to the left, power button to the right. And this is where the SIM slot also resides. Here you can pop in 2 SIM cards or a SIM and a microSD card. In the few weeks I've been testing this, I've had no issues with the cellular reception or the call quality. The loudspeaker to the bottom does its job. The output levels are decent. Do note that the C5 does come with a micro USB port, no Type-C, and a 3.5mm headphone jack. Just saying. The audio quality via the headphone jack is decent. Just like most other Android phones, it doesn't come with a dedicated DAC. The front is where we can find the beautiful 5.2-inch Full HD Super AMOLED display. I found the visibility under sunlight to be great, and the viewing angles aren't any different. It's just really good. It's also totally worth mentioning that we have an ambient light sensor in here for auto brightness, something we find missing on a lot of Samsung phones. We don't have much control over white balance and saturation, but there are 3 presets found here. You just might like one of them. And just in case you found any stutters while I got in here, it's because Samsung decided to go with the Snapdragon 617 chip here. Of course, it struggles to keep the Full HD display up and running. It gets worse during heavy usage with many processes running in the background. And if gaming is high on your list of priorities, the Adreno 405 GPU doesn't help much. Even light games like Tiger Ball and Leo's Fortune encounter frame drops and lag. With heavy titles like the Asphalt 8, needless to say it becomes almost unplayable. Maybe using a 720p display would have made things better, but me personally, I'd say throw in a Snapdragon 625 or a 650 instead. That said, there's 4 gigs of RAM to handle memory-intensive tasks. The RAM management is quite decent. Now the camera part is a bit tricky. Testing this 16-megapixel rear camera required quite a lot of time. Initially, I wasn't very impressed with it. The dynamic range was very poor and the colors were washed out. There was no HDR mode too, at least that's what I thought. And then as I started shooting more pictures, I found the HDR mode tucked in here. And the pictures shot in this mode looked way better. Here are some samples. Of course, it takes a few seconds before it lets you snap another picture, but given the difference in quality, I was ready to wait. And just when I made up my mind, I realized one more thing. In HDR mode, the pictures are shot in 8 megapixels. This was kinda surprising. As in, why would you do that, Samsung? Surprising. But that said, even after realizing this fact, I found myself using the HDR mode way too often. There is a dedicated manual mode too, but you don't have control over the focus or the shutter speed. Anyway, a bit of noise creeps in when it comes to pictures taken indoors, but the color reproduction and the overall image quality stay good. The camera's low light performance is decent too. The noise levels aren't very high thanks to the presence of optical image stabilization and an f1.9 aperture. The color reproduction is decent too. There's a dedicated night mode which makes things a tad better. The 8-megapixel front-facing camera is capable of capturing good selfies. One con though is that the software processing tends to smoothen things more than required even with the beauty mode off. That's something common among Samsung phones, but nevertheless it consistently captures good pictures. good color reproduction, decent dynamic range and level of detail. The C5 is capable of shooting 1080p videos at 30 frames per second. The quality again is decent. It's sharp with a lot of detail and decent color reproduction. Given that it has OIS, the footage is kinda stable too. There's nothing worth mentioning about the camera interface. It's exactly what you find in most other Samsung phones. Speaking of which, the Galaxy C5 runs on Touchwiz based on Android 6.0.1 Marshmallow. It's got all the regular Touchwiz features, like the quick launch shortcut where you double press the home button to launch the camera, the smart manager, the easy mode, and so on. And my favorite, the regular and the ultra battery saving modes that have worked wonders for me. The user interface isn't very smooth, there is some UI lag, but I blame the chipset for this rather than Touchwiz itself. The phone also heats up quite often, meaning the battery drains faster during medium to intensive usage. With my regular usage, which includes a few minutes with the camera, an hour or so of mild gaming, an hour of YouTube, and a regular loitering on Twitter, WhatsApp, Facebook, Messenger, and so on. Yeah, I do use Facebook and Messenger, the two apps known to kill battery. The C5's 2600 mAh battery did get me through one full work day. Now that is without the use of battery saving modes. Using one of them should get you through a few more hours, depending on when you enable it. It's also worth mentioning that there's no support for quick charge. Anyway, the Galaxy C5 is exclusive to the Chinese market right now. There's no word of its launch in the other markets yet. It's priced at 2199 yuan, about 22,000 rupees for the 32GB variant, and 2399 yuan, about 24,000 rupees for the 64GB variant. To me, that seems to be better value for money than a J2 or a J5. We have backlit capacitive keys, haptic feedback, and all other basic sensors except for gyroscope. We also have a good camera with optical image stabilization. That's a quite decent deal if you ask me. Would be a better one if Samsung threw in the Snapdragon 625 instead. Because if there's one reason I'm not buying this, it's the 617 chip underneath. But what about you? Do you agree with me on this? Go leave a comment below and let me know. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it useful and stay subscribed. Or if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button down below for more videos like this. And while you're at it, do this to make sure you get notified whenever a new video goes live on C4E Tech. So that's it, thanks a lot for watching. This is Sundar from C4E Tech, leaving for the moment. Have a great day.